I want to welcome everybody to this evening's program with Janet Hansen to hear about Earth Day liturgies. I'm Courtney Wilcox. I serve on the steering committee of Presbyterians for Earth Care. And I know you're used to seeing Bruce Gillette in this role. He is feeling a little punky after working to recover from pneumonia. So he might be joining us later. So I'm going to try and do a really fine job. Mindy just said that, keep yourselves muted unless you have a question. And we're going to hear from Janet and then have some time for questions. Before we start Janet's program, we're also going to have some time for breakout groups, right? Janet, you wanted to do that before your program? Great. And I'm going to open us up with prayer. And I actually am using Earth Gospel, which is written by Sam Hamilton Poore, who also serves on the board on the steering committee of Presbyterians for Earth Care. And I love this resource. So if you'll pray with me. You are God, not me, not us. Help me to remember this simple fact each day. You are the center of creation, not me, not us. Help me to reorganize my place within the orbit of your grace. You are the source of all life, not me, not us. Let me find you in you my kinship with all creation. And then the words to carry forward: be strong and of good courage. Do not fear, for God goes with you, and God will never fail, forget, or forsake you. And that's based on Deuteronomy 31. So welcome to this program. We're happy to have you here. We're going to do some breakout groups for just 3 or 4 minutes to share some information. And it includes, we're going to introduce ourselves. We're going to share our name, our church, the role we play in that church, and what Native American land we sit on, if you know that. So Mindy's going to put us into breakout groups and then bring us back.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Good to be with you all, so to speak.
Could I read your introduction, Janet, so everybody knows who you are? Okay, let me
Sure.
do that. Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Janet Adair Hansen. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She retired in 2018 after 36 years as a local pastor, the last 18 serving Christ Community Church in Cortland, New York. From 2019 to 2021, she served as interim pastor for a UCC church next to Acadia National Park in Maine. Janet was a General Assembly commissioner in 1990 in Salt Lake when the PCUSA adopted our major environmental justice policy statement, and an original Restoring Creation enabler trained at Ghost Ranch in 1996. From 1997 to 2003, she served on the steering committee for the predecessor of Presbyterians for Earth Care, and she was a conference coordinator for the National Eco-Justice Conference on Living Waters at St. Simon's Island in February of 2000. In Susquehanna Valley Presbytery in New York, she helped the late Reverend Dr. William Gibson write the 2001 PCUSA Statement on Biodiversity Loss and Threatened Mass Extinction. She served the Synod of the Northeast on their Public Policy Advocacy Network for 13 years, and the last 7 of those as the moderator. Since retiring, Janet has volunteered and worked at Yellowstone National Park, 2 California Redwood State Parks, and Gulf Coast Texas State Park, and 6 New York State Parks. This is my pleasure to introduce to you Janet Hansen.
It's good to be back with my folk and with people who are enthusiastic about the earth and helping church members across the country and around the world to really connect with worship, not just with other people and with God, but with all of God's creatures in all life forms. So I want to highlight both some things for this year's eco-justice theme. about plastics, and I cracked up. Avery Davis Lamb does have an article in the May issue of Sojourners magazine that's basically, repeats some of the stuff he's done with us. But he calls it Worship of Bobblehead Jesus. It's on pages 14 to 15 of the latest Sojourners that just came out. So I enjoyed that. And then I've been one to sometimes open people's eyes that besides resources from churches, that the National Association of Conservation Districts has had educational materials since the 1950s. They used to have specific church-related guides, and I saw this year they just got the regular educator guides, but they've still got posted things that you can look at and see. And let's see if I can manage to do something with sharing a screen. Okay, and figure out where I'm going with that. I go to, I don't know if that'll work or not. Okay, that may not let me work. I was going to try to screen share where the homepage websites that talk about Plastic Jesus, and also for the National Association of Conservation Districts. But the other thing I'm going to share should work later, so we're good. So for the resource pages that you got, you should have got an email today. And what I tried to do was put together some resources, some liturgical elements that go together with this year's themes. So for Plastic Jesus, for example, one of the first things I think I put down there is a quote from George Tinker, who I don't know if he still is. He was on the faculty of Iliff School of Theology in Denver, Colorado, and a Lutheran minister and member of the Osage and Cherokee Nation. And he, what I've often used as a contemporary lesson is that piece about all of my relations. So I might have in worship service, not all 4 lectionary passages, but maybe 2 of them, and then maybe a contemporary lesson. And so this is one of the things that I've used. And as I was looking through the plastics material, it occurred to me that this piece about all my relations fits in with thinking about ecosystems and how there's a community impact of the use of plastics and when things break down into microplastics. So again, what I've tried to do is to put some pieces that maybe could be useful liturgically for you, if not for Earth Day, maybe for another situation, if you're leading worship or helping to plan worship. I think it's really important as you're planning worship, if you're working with a committee or team or whatever, to think about your audience. And one reason I point out the National Association of Conservation Districts, when I served churches in Wyoming and New Mexico, to some people in the audience back in the 90s, environmentalist was considered like a dirty word, and it was a red flag word, and people had sometimes strong emotions with that. So if I presented things that I would say, this is from the National Association of Conservation Districts, that was very well received, because out west, they're really into conservation and very aware of issues with soil loss or water availability. So it's good to figure out what kind of resources are going to, and liturgical elements are going to speak to your particular congregation or your audience, whatever it is. Also, I've also been a spiritual director for a long time. And you need to, as you're choosing liturgical pieces, or if you're a preacher and what are you going to preach about, you need to pick out something that's going to resonate in you, in your heart. Because if you bring your authentic self to worship, then your message and the prayers and liturgical elements are going to be a lot more powerful. And I think about Howard Thurman's quote about to not ask what the world needs, but ask what makes you come alive. And so, as you're thinking about, am I choosing plastics? Am I choosing May the Forest Be With You, which is this year's National Association of Conservation District Stewardship theme? Or if you're using something else elsewhere during the year. Find something that really just, it feels like it settles in you deep and that it's calling to you, because then that will really carry over and resonate in the worship that you lead. I wanted to make one other comment. I've been privileged to do a couple of seminars offered through the main, what used to be Bangor Theological Seminary, and now they have a center, but they've done a lot of eco-spirituality stuff through there. And I've been to a couple of workshops featuring Victoria Lures, who wrote Church of the Wild, How Nature Invites Us into the Sacred. And from her book, one of the biblical insights that really resonated in me was she said she had a former neighbor, Chad Myers, that you might know as writing an academic study of Mark's gospel. And Mark said, when Mark's gospel talks about Jesus getting baptized in the Jordan River, when other people are getting baptized, the Greek word en, basically in English, en is used, which shows the place or location. But when in Mark's gospel, when Jesus is baptized, then the preposition switches from en to eis, E-I-S in English, which means into, not just in, and more of a penetration and a union with. So Jesus gets baptized into the Jordan River, and the wild bird comes down into him, not just on him, and Jesus gets sent into the wilderness. And so there's what Victoria Lures says is this Greek preposition is not locational, it's not location, but relational. And so whatever Earth Day or creation care messages you give, hopefully what's going to come is promoting this relationship, not just an academic understanding or some kind of theological thing, but really promoting a relationship. So that is the goal, I think. So in the resources that I have gotten for you, so I've got that piece about from George Tinker, All My Relations. And then when I was reading in the plastics resources about the based in Anchorage, that Alaska Community Action on Toxic Study, and the discussion about what happened on St. Lawrence Island. And I don't think I can give proper pronunciation to Sivukak, which is the native term. But the issues there are so heart-wrenching. And one of the things that popped into my mind, something I have used for years, I adapted something that a medical missionary in Labrador wrote over a century ago in 1909. And this medical missionary, all those decades ago, over a century ago, said, "It's not been easy to convey to the Eskimo mind the meaning of the Oriental similes of the Bible. Thus, the Lamb of God had to be translated to the kotik, or the young seal. This animal, with its perfect whiteness as it lies in its cradle of ice, its gentle, helpless nature, and its pathetic, innocent eyes, is probably as apt a substitute, however, as nature offers." So when I have used this in worship as part of an assurance of pardon, I have added the lines you see that, remembering the kotiks of these young white baby seals have been endangered. We revisit the ancient prayer of the church, "O kotik of God, who takest away the sins of the world, have mercy on us and grant us thy peace." So I've got the whole liturgical piece in there for you. In the resource, there's also looking at the scriptures for the day. Abundant Life from John chapter 10 is the gospel reading. And it made, for what resonated in me, what connected in me, was a reading from Ed Abbey. And I've used, usually I've reduced this reading, but the full thing is, and as a confession of sin, we failed to be good stewards of the earth. And then here's a long quote from his book, The Journey Home, some words in defense of the American West. And he starts out with, "Junk, trash, rubbish, our lives are debauched, our natural resources squandered, our native land ravaged in this mad production of metal, plastic, glass, and paper garbage." So from the things I've sent you, I've included that you can, I think would fit in if you're looking at the issue of plastics, and microplastics is something that's possible to use in your worship service. Let's see, and what do I put next? Oh, yes. There's at least one or two other people here that with me were at the 1996 commissioning service for what were then called Restoring Creation Enablers at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. And there was this wonderful liturgy and meditation on the Lord's Prayer, which was adapted from a study guide and the PHC USA back in the late 1980s. And this, I think, is a wonderful liturgical piece that could fit in if you're doing the theme on plastics or other times. But as you can see, it's meant for 2 readers, and then the people respond, help us to know and do your will, to live more simply that others may simply live. But it's, I think, very profound. So like several lines down, reader 1 says, forgive us our sins. And reader 2 says, in what way does our society hurt others by our demand for affluent lifestyles? How might our way of living be considered a sin against God's will? And the people respond, forgive us, O Lord, for the greed that keeps us overfed and overheated, overcooked and overwhelmed, while most people struggle to survive. So again, this is something that occurred to me could fit in as a liturgical piece, an element if you're doing worship about plastics or microplastics. For Soil and Water Stewardship Week, the National Association of Conservation Districts has been rotating themes each year. They usually have one on soil, one on water, one on trees or forests, and then some other theme like pollinators or whatever. And if you check on their website, you can see previous year's themes with resources and materials you might use. And by the way, the same thing is true for eco-justice. You know, if plastics doesn't grab you, look at some other previous year's themes. Maybe there's something that relates to what your community or your church is grappling with or faced with or something. So even though, you know, this webinar is highlighting this year's themes, there are other things that you can go back to and do. So when I was an interim pastor there in Maine 3 years ago, the Association of Conservation Districts, their stewardship theme was also on forests. So let me see if I can open a PowerPoint and figure out how to share my screen. It is that one.
That's got it.
Okay, good. So what I got to stay on the right thing. Close that. Sorry, let me get back to the PowerPoint. It's been I was confessing that it's been a while since I retired, and I haven't been using all of these skills recently. So one of the things that happened because of COVID is everybody was doing remote worship. And so I was able to use photos that tied in with the theme. And so if you do multimedia worship, which my home church in Cortland still does, and we can project pictures, we use a wall instead of a screen, put pictures up for Earth Day or whatever creation care service you're doing, because you want to have some sense of the outdoors. Also, you know, bringing in living plants, you know, things that I know we in the past had some really amazing worship experiences at national eco-justice conferences with water and rocks and plants and stuff. And so, you know, find things that are very sensory if you're trying to help people to open their senses as well as their minds to the natural world. So let me move on. Oh, that was a picture from a volunteer Earth Day work that had been done, because this worship was for Soil and Water Stewardship Week, which is the last Sunday of April to the first Sunday of May. So I had pictures to share from the Earth Day cleanup that volunteers participated in. So in multimedia worship, what I tried to do was to have pictures from the area, from Mountain Desert Island and Acadia National Park, close to where I was. When out west, you'd want to have some things from there. In this worship service, I had a number of quotes from John Muir, which worked out really well with the forest theme. So I've included those in your resource. And does anybody have that resource in front of them?
Yes, I do.
Would you be willing to read just one of those? We'll just read one John Muir quote.
Sure. Come to the woods, for here is rest. There is no response like that of the deep green woods. Here grow the wallflower and the violet. The squirrel will come and sit upon your knee. The log cock will wake you in the morning. Sleep in forgetfulness of all ill, of all the upness accessible to mortals. There is no upness comparable to the mountains.
Thank you. So when I've done any worship with Earth Care or Eco Justice or anything, I've tried to include some quotes from famous authors and just little tidbits that have been thrown in various places in the worship service. The Uniting Church in Australia has been a big player in putting together resources for September's Season of Creation, which is an alternative to the regular lectionary. And so this call to worship I used 3 years ago was from that. And again, local pictures that I kept trying to include in the worship service. The resource, Psalm 96, adapted by one of the leaders from the National Association of Conservation Districts. Again, for whatever liturgical piece, I was trying to find photos that at this time we were meeting remotely, but to help people to really feel connected. I found a term that I hadn't been familiar with. So in terms of may the forest be with you always, it turned out a nemophilist is a haunter of the woods, one who loves the forest and its beauty and solitude. I got quite tickled at that. This is a picture I took of Acadia National Park. So again, and one of the things that we ended up doing at this church, that I was interim pastor, there was going to be a search for a new pastor coming on board, and we had to get input from the congregation when we couldn't meet together. So we signed up for some online methods of taking instant polls, and I don't still have this one, but at the bottom of the resources I gave you, there are some questions about trees that are true or false. So let me ask, let's see, number 1 was, trees are the largest and longest living organisms on the planet, true or false? And can people maybe do a hand, raise your hand if you think it's true.
How are you seeing us?
And you can raise your hand by using the reactions, just the raise hand function.
Yes.
At the bottom
you.
of the screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney.
Actions.
And you think it's true? Okay. Does anybody think that's false?
No.
So you're right, that is true. But one of the things to engage people in worship is I will sometimes throw in questions and get people reaction and engaged at some point where it seems to be appropriate to fall into the service. All right, let me move on. Okay. Prayers. One of the scriptures I used that particular week was from Isaiah 55. That's wonderfully delightful about what things are going to be like. But I know one of the verses, I think it's around 9 or 10, that escapes people is the prophet saying that instead of the bramble, you're going to get the myrtle tree. And basically that's saying that instead of the invasive growth and weeds where land has suffered, there's going to be healthy landscape again. And people who are just reading that don't necessarily, understand that point of what's going on with the description of the plant life. Romans 8 is, of course, the whole creation groaning in travail, awaiting the full revelation of the children of God. And then I had in this service a reading from Wendell Berry, The Journey's End. I believe I've got that in your resource as well. And you can find all kinds of resources anywhere. I've, of course, put stuff that meant something for me. But this is the one that begins, let's see. I'll skip it on to additional resources. This is the one that begins, at any moment, I think the forest may reveal itself to you in a new way. And it's just a lovely quote from Wendell Berry. Okay, what else did I want to show you? The Creation Creed that I used in the middle of this service was, again, from Resources for a Season of Creation. And something else I've sometimes used is from the policy statement from 1990 that was called Restoring Creation for what was it, Eco-Justice. I can't remember the full title, but you can use pieces like that.
Ecology and Justice.
Thank you, Ecology and Justice. So I, instead of just having, quote, a regular, normal, whatever creed, I have tried to use something that really speaks to what's going on with the earth. The Mount Desert Island, where the church was, had a community program called the Climate to Thrive. So that became the mission moment for that particular Sunday. So hopefully, as you're planning worship, the mission moment will tie into something to do with plastics, something to do with forests, or whatever other theme you have going on. So I'm going to stop the screen share. So I was just wanting to give you a taste of how things could be adapted and some things that you could use in terms of your worship resources. So you want to be mindful of time here. How's time going? Okay. Has anybody else done that Season of Creation in September, September 1st through St. Francis' birthday on October 4th? So that, if you're not aware of it, the churches in Australia have really, I think there's two different sources of resources, liturgical resources for that. And they do a 3-year thematic thing, just like the regular lectionary. So when I was a pastor in Cortland, sometimes they got to have at least 7 Sundays a year with the earth care and environmental justice themes. So I would do Earth Day in April, and then I'd choose either the last Sunday in April or first Sunday of May for that stewardship of soil and water that the Conservation District promotes. There would be an outdoor worship service where I'm like, well, if we're going to be outdoors, we're going to say something about God's creation. We'll do that one. And then 4 Sundays, if I did all 4 Sundays in September. So that's right there, at least 7 Sundays where the whole worship had an emphasis. Now, I didn't do that every single year. That might be a little bit too much, but there were some Sundays that there were some years 7 Sundays, all on connecting to creation, environmental justice, some kind of a theme. And I'm going to, let's see if I can share my screen again. Let me get back to that part. Okay, I'm going to share a screen. Okay, so when I was in Maine, in September of 2020, which was Labor Day weekend, I ended up going with looking at blueberries and the blueberry workers with an overall theme of sustainability and worker justice. So this is what you're seeing is the worship bulletin that people saw. So I tied in concern with farm workers with what was going on. So that was that Sunday. And then where did I put it? Oh, I might have made it disappear. Okay. On the 20th, the theme was Tragedy of the Commons, Public Lands. And so I worked in resources that fit in with that. So we ended up with several Sundays in a row that covered things. I am very grateful to Carolyn Winfrey Gillette, Bruce's wife. She has written lyrics to familiar hymns, and one of the ones that I have used a lot, and I did include again in this resource, because I think it's worth doing a lot, is The Earth is the Lord's. But Manly Olson, who I saw was here earlier, he's written some things too, some songs that can be used. And let me say that when I was working on my doctoral dissertation back in the 1990s on wilderness spirituality and really getting more and more into caring for and preserving God's creation, there just weren't as many liturgical elements, prayers, songs, or whatever. And now we are so blessed that there's just so much more. And so be grateful for it. It just really enriches worship if you've got hymnody that fits in with your theme. So I'm very sensitive about having the worship being a holistic experience in terms of what you're doing. For planning worship, one of the things you can do is like for the Sunday about blueberries, we had something that people could do to help support the blueberry workers who are active in Maine. So you can have your Minute for Mission be related to your service and have it be something that people feel like they can make a difference. I also think it's important to give people things that they can do once worship ends. Right now, we've, of course, got some national overtures going to this year's General Assembly that Presbyterians for Earth Care very much is in support of, and hopefully you'll be educating people and helping them to understand what's going on. But you also hopefully are looking at things that are going on in your local community. When I was a pastor out west, water issues were a big concern. When I was in Portales, New Mexico, on the edge close to the Texas Panhandle, Roosevelt County had no overland water. It depended on the Ogallala Aquifer, which covers the center part of the country, and it was getting drained so rapidly that farmers were having a hard time getting water up to keep their fields going. When I moved to New York State, different thing going on in the early 2000s, the big issue was hydrofracking. And so church groups, faith groups got involved with that along with environmental justice groups. And we were fortunate to have, with New York's notorious change of governors for various scandals or problems, we were fortunate to get a governor in there that ended up helping to put a ban on fracking. But having, things that people can do or relate to, I think is an important part of worship, so that worship isn't just, your 1 hour or less than an hour or slightly over an hour on a Sunday morning, but something that people can be engaged with, and having those possibilities is very important. To wrap things up and allow time for questions, let me double check where my notes are. Look at my notes again. Okay. In the worship service itself, I try to put the words of the charge as something that will inspire people or exhort them really to go out and do something to help whatever issue the worship service has just been about. And let's see, I think I've got 6 points here I want to just quickly go through so that Earth Day Sunday is not just like, okay, that's our one Sunday a year, check, we got that done, but making it broader. So providing things people can do individually. The Lutheran Church equivalent to Presbyterians for Earth Care, which is called Lutherans Restoring Creation, has online a personal covenant with creation that people can take. And actually it's made with Google Docs, and maybe Presbyterians for Earth Care can do something like that too. Ongoing studies, Bible studies, or joining with more than one church, or in the community offering something, that's good. How can your church care for the earth? Some churches have replaced landscaping. I was laughing as I was thinking about this, that 20 years ago, there was a big push to change traditional incandescent light bulbs over to compact fluorescent bulbs. Does anybody else remember doing that? So things change, but do some consciousness raising with your church, and what can we do about the church itself, and also homeowners? Can we have gardens that are more friendly to pollinators, like butterflies and birds and bees? What about growing your own food? There's a dude, I'm sorry, here I am, an old hippie, a guy named Timothy Hammond, who can be found on Instagram, YouTube, and a blog called Big City Gardener, so that even in a big city, just grow it. You can grow your own food. And again, when you're looking at caring for the earth, you're caring for your particular part and what's going on in your corner of the world. So that obviously the concerns for my churches out west were very different from when I got to New York. And that was also different from when I got to Maine, which was concerned about during the COVID pandemic, they shut down all the shipping lines. And then they were questioning, are they going to let cruise ships dump 5,000 people at a time out at Bar Harbor? Or is that really good or not? So you want your worship and your suggestions for actions or follow-up to relate to the local church. Okay, I think I'm going to close it down right there, being mindful of time.
Well, Janet, thank you so much. And I think you've given us so much to think about, and also some pretty remarkable resources. Just to repeat, everybody who registered for this should have gotten resources in a PDF format for participants of the PEC Earth Day Worship Zoom webinar, with many of these references that Janet just referred to. So for those who are involved in not just the Earth Day service, but sort of an overall look at how to keep Earth Day rolling in your congregation throughout the year, do you have any thoughts, suggestions, or questions for Janet? And if you do, if you could use the reactions icon in the bar along the bottom of your screen and just click raise hand. And that way we know that you have a question.
And I would like to say that it's a question for all of us. Let's all use our resources. So I'm not the expert. We're all experts together.
And so Jane Fritz has her hand up. Jane, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi.
There you go.
Thank you, Janet, for all of that. I was particularly intrigued with the season of creation that you do in the fall and September. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that. I like the idea of extending, Earth Care beyond April. And so I don't know if you could address that a little bit more.
Yeah, so this started up in the early 2000s. I'm trying to see if I copied any links for you. I'm not sure if I did. And in Australia, there was a union of several denominations like Methodist and Presbyterian and whatever. So it's called the Uniting Church in Australia. And they just really got on board with the environmental justice and said we need to have, a season of the earth that goes there. Okay, yes, I think I did. At the bottom of your resources, right before that tree poll, I've got the season of creation stuff that the World Council of Churches does, and then below that for Australian and Lutheran churches, so one is seasonofcreation.org, the other is seasonofcreation.com. And so those are two sets of some resources and things that are going on. And I have found those to be just so rich and so wonderful. So yeah, I hope those links work for you.
Sorry, and Sister Phyllis?
Hi. Well, first, kind of a selfish reason, I'm getting ready to do a table at an Earth Fair. Could you give us the rest of the answers to the tree poll? And second, I love doing Season of Creation. We've done it in the congregations where I've served for several years now, and especially love winding it up with the blessing of the animals on St. Francis Day, because it's so much fun to have people either on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon bring their animals, and you never know what animals you're going to end up blessing.
When I've done that, I just tell everybody, no snakes, please don't bring me a snake.
Seriously, I would, if someone brought me a snake, I would have to say, you put your hand on the head and these are the words we'll say.
Yeah. The tree poll, this one, I found in educator resources for a previous year when forest was a theme for the NACD. If you go through, if you look at this, the very bottom of the resources I sent you, look at all those questions. They're all true.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is kind of, because people think, no, there's got to be something that's false. No, it's all true.
That's great.
Thank
Anne,
you.
thank you, Sister Ann Mayer.
Yes, actually, Diane Glasgow will be speaking for our First Presbyterian Church of Cookville.
Hi, as we said in our small group, we're going to be hosting a huge Earth Day event here in our fellowship hall on the Saturday before. And I'd like to challenge you, if you haven't addressed it, to have your church compost and also to recycle all year. And we're going to be doing a presentation at that event on how to compost to help care for our growth and many other issues. So thank you for all of this information as well.
Thank you, Anne. Betsy?
Thank you. First of all, I'm working with Dr. LaDonna Clayton, who is head of the Clovis Water Conservancy, and she is working with the city of Portales because they have been on super strict water restrictions and are tired, like the people in the desert with Moses, and they want to go back from the level 3, which are the strictest, to level 2. So we are working on that and working to find out where the 250 communities in New Mexico that are on the brink of water loss are, so that we can begin work with them. The other thing I would like to let you know is that I was told to get in touch with endocrinologists, and one sent me a video and transcript of a planning meeting for global plastic pollution treaty work that is being done, and that that was on March 14th, 2024. There will be a meeting in Canada to work further on that. It may be the final meeting. I don't know. They weren't sure. And that is from 4/23 to 4/29, 2024.
But Betsy, that sounds like something we would all benefit. Could you maybe send it out to Mindy, and Mindy could send it out to this group?
I'll do that, Mindy. Thank you.
Thank you.
That'd be
And so
great.
what the area Betsy's talking about is where I was a pastor from 1996 to 2000, where there's no overland water and the Oglala Aquifer is being drained. And of all the stupid things that I was active in the community speaking out against was California land was so expensive that people were promoting Eastern New Mexico as cheap land. Bring your dairy cows here. I'm like, that's a water intensive industry. Are you out of your minds?
Mhm.
Thank you. And so Mindy will share that, or is it something that you can put in the chat? Is it a link that you could put in the chat?
I don't know how to do that.
If not, I will put this recording on a web page and all the resources that are mentioned here that I can pull back up from the recording, and I will give everybody the link to the page. So we'll include Betsy's. If Betsy just sends it to me separately in an email, that's fine.
That's
Thank
great. And I've also included some links in the page. Nancy, your hand has been up and down and up and down, and I've missed you every time. So sorry. Sorry.
That's fine. I was just going to say, we have been working in our Earth Care group on single-use plastics. And someone has begun the whole effort to every week have some idea of what you can do. And sort of keep people and encourage people in the congregation to say, what are you doing to avoid the single-use plastics? Are you going to laundry soap that's on paper rather than in those big ugly plastic bottles and whatnot? And that's going really well. One of the things we have begun to do is put out little sheets of paper that have I'm trying to say so many things at a time. That have the phone numbers for our U.S. senators and representatives and whatnot. And we're saying use the power of your voice as a citizen. So we have this for both counties that most of our people come from. And two of the things that we're asking soon for them to write to are, someone just mentioned that Canada gathering, and I'm glad to know what the dates are. April 23rd to 9th. And you can, if you can somehow get in touch with Secretary of State Blinken, tell him that we really need to do something about it. And the other thing is that there is a bill in the House in the United States called the Plastic Pellet Free Water Act. And it's to work with those little things called nurdles, N-U-R-D-L-E-S, and get them out of the waters and all, so that they don't get into our bodies. I mean, this is really something that we're working a lot on. And so I just wanted to say that. The other thing I want to say is please read the next copy of Earth News. It's all about plastics. And Mindy, you could probably say more about that. Janet, thank you so much for presenting all of this, because I think we're all wells of information and we just need to talk with each other and give each other encouragement for these things that are being done, because they really help us deal with so much of the bad news. So that this is good news.
No, I am.
Did anybody have any other questions? For any, is there any information? I did want to mention that Diane Waddell, who is from Heartland Presbytery, said that the Master Gardeners in Northwest Missouri are having a great native plant conference in September. And Doug Ptolemy is going to be the keynote speaker, and we love Doug Ptolemy. So thank you, Diane, for doing that. Is that going to be on Zoom?
I don't believe so, but there's still plenty of reservations open, and you can still come and have a nice weekend if you want to have a little bit of a destination in St. Joseph, Missouri. If it is, if there's any part of it on Zoom, I will let you know. But right now, I think it's all just live. But, yeah, I'm getting my clue there from Courtney. She had Doug do some work with her church previously, so that was wonderful.
I
Yeah.
did. It was wonderful. I also wanted to mention, and I put it in the chat, Dr. William Brown, who is a friend of Presbyterians for Earth Care, wrote for the Presbyterian Mission Agency, The Psalmist and the Solar Eclipse, and brings together a lot of things that we've been talking about, brings together science, brings together the Psalms. So I have put that in the chat as well and encourage you to take a look at it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So we're really grateful that that Bill Brown is around and writing important things.
Yes.
Any other questions? Comments? Well, Janet, is there anything you want to say in parting? I have to say, we're so grateful for your time and all your resources and expertise.
Well, thank you. When we're wrapping up, if we're about ready, I actually found a charge and benediction I've used when the theme was water issues, which hearing what's going on still in eastern New Mexico brings up to me. And this is not in your resources, but if we're ready to close, I would love to do a closing.
I would like to just, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to share a slide real quick.
Sure.
2 slides about a couple things, and then I think we'll be ready, Courtney, if that's okay.
That sounds great. Thanks, Mindy.
Okay, I'll pull them up, and then if you want me to, I can mention them, or you can, whatever you would.
I can go over them if you want to pull
Okay,
them up.
that'd be great.
So one of the exciting things that Presbyterians for Earth Care is doing is working toward overtures at the 2024 General Assembly. One is removal of investment in and subsidies for fossil fuels, Overture 13. Overture 14 is on becoming free from plastic pollution, which we've already talked about is really important. And then Overture 7, adoption of the Sustainable Peace Pledge. And you can find updates on the General Assembly website at that link there. Mindy, is there anything that I missed on those?
Nope, just the first 2 are ones that people on the Presbyterians for Earth Care steering committee helped write, and more concurrences by Presbyterians are a great thing. So if you want more information on those, you can go to that link there. We have more details about them. And then Overture 007, that is not one that was created by Presbyterians for Earth Care, but it's also another one that mentions taking care of the earth. So that's all.
Great, thanks. And then it's always a good idea to offer resources to Presbyterians for Earth Care so that we can continue these programs, we can continue the advocacy that we do, we can continue offering resources to Presbyterians across the country, which is a really exciting opportunity for us. So if you are able, please donate to presbyteryearthcare.org/giving. So thank you. And now, Janet, if you would like to offer our benediction, that would be wonderful.
Okay, that's great. So again, this was from a worship with a water theme. And this is the charge. Water reveals to us the care that God gives to all creatures. For human beings, water is a symbol of the generosity, the beauty, and the power of God's love. God, our Creator, has given us water to sustain and nurture us, to be a sign of life and holiness. May we be faithful keepers of clean waters and healthy lands. Go forth to be a sign of God's blessing to all the earth. And the benediction, may the ocean of God's love, the rivers of Christ's grace, and the streams of the Spirit's inspiration flood you and fill you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Janet, and thank you all, not only for showing up, but for the work that you do in your congregations, in your presbyteries, and your synods, and in the whole big church. Thank
Mm.
you. Thank you for caring for God's creation.